there's the problems in Acts chapter 6. Some of the people didn't think they were being fed fairly as non-Jew Christians. And there were going to be 7 men that the apostles brought forward that were going to be used to serve these people. 2 of them that we have noticed, one is Stephen, that we looked at, and the other one is Philip. Okay? And when I look in Acts chapter 8, one of the phrases that comes to me that we're going to begin with here, the first question is, what is the sovereignty of God? Because if there's a picture, a painting of what the sovereignty of God is, Philip's life is it. Okay? So what would be your definition of the sovereignty of God? When I ask a question like that, it's time for you guys. Anybody? Well, I'm just going to stand here to the answer.
Love God.
What?
The sincerity and the love of God.
Okay, that's going to be the basis of that. What does it mean to be sovereign? Pardon me?
All powerful.
All powerful? Okay. Anybody else?
Pure.
Pure? Okay. The sovereignty of God is what we believe in when things are going well. The sovereignty of God means that God is in control of all things. There's not anything that is outside of His control. When things are going well, we believe in that. But when things don't go quite so well, then we begin to question whether God knows what He's doing or not. So when we look at the sovereignty of God, you know, when things aren't going well, sovereignty of God is something somebody else believes in. Okay? How many of you believe this morning that God is in control of everything in the world? Okay? Do we live our lives believing that? And the answer is no, we don't. Because when things don't go the way we want, all at once God's lost His control. Because if God was in control, everything would be going the way I want it to go. Because surely you and I are agreeing with God all the time, or is He agreeing with me, right? So when things aren't going well, something's wrong with God. But what if His plan isn't my plan? See, there's the problem that we get into. We claim to have faith, but we live life based upon worldly principles. I can't do this. Is it because God doesn't want you to? No, because I don't think I've got enough money. So we can't. See, we start looking at worldly principles. We look at the Middle East. We see all the chaos that's going there. You don't think God's not in control of the Middle East? If God is not in control of all things, we might as well just have me sing. Then you know it. No, anyway. See, it's the very basis, is it not, of everything. That God is in control. Jesus said why? God knows when a sparrow falls to the ground. He knows the number of hairs on our head. Why don't we believe that? Because if we did, we'd live differently than we live. In the midst of the chaos, there is God working because He's always working. He's always working. People know why people aren't coming to the church. I think it's because there's a whole group of Christian people in the world that don't live like Christians every day. They're sitting in the pews or the chairs on Sunday, but they live differently during the week. In camp, one of the great things about camp is to get to know a lot of the young people. And folks, there's been young people that at the end of camp would come up and say, Joe, I want to go into ministry. I want to become a missionary, or I want to serve God in some way. And we would go talk to their parents, Christian parents, church leaders, and say, this child wants to go into ministry, they want to go to missions. You know what the number one answer from the parents is? You can't make any money like that. I thought we were Christians. I thought that we were going above the ways of the world. The sovereignty of God is so important here. We see it in the life of Philip, don't we? That God is directing Philip all the way through this, no matter what we might think is happening here. Philip, we're going to see Philip only 3 times in our Bible. In Acts 6, Acts 8, and somewhere in Acts 26, I don't remember, 21, 20, somewhere in there. When he leaves the eunuch, he ends up in Caesarea. And Paul comes and stays with him, and that's a whole other story after the third missionary journey. Because the very man that was persecuting the church was Paul, that caused Philip to end up where he was going to end up. And he comes there as a preacher now, not a persecutor of the Christians. So we have to look and apply this. Philip preaching. Today, if you're going to preach somewhere, you're going to have to be educated. I can tell you in the past that there's been 3 or 4 churches that contacted me about becoming a minister, and when they found out I don't have a degree, they were not interested at all. At all. I was the hospice chaplain, and I was for 1.5 years, but when the state of Illinois found out that I didn't have a degree in anything, it didn't matter what it was, you had to have a master's degree, which explained that to me, but anyway. So they had a big shot from hospice come and say, Mr. Hughes, do you have a degree? And the first time I answered 98.6. And he just looked at me, my humor. But then he looked at me again, he said, sir, do you have a master's degree? And I said, sir, I have the master's degree. I love God, I love people, what else? But I was taken away from that because I didn't have a degree. That's the way our society looks now. So if we would take Philip and put him up here in 2015, there wouldn't be hardly any churches that would look at him. Yet here is a man who is going to serve God in an unbelievable way, not like we would think, but serve God in a huge way, because he was ready to obey what God wanted him to do, no matter what it might be. Okay? So let's look at, when we look here in Acts chapter 8, we're going to begin by, the first point is God dispersing. There's this persecution of the stoning of Stephen, and there's great persecution of the church. Did God do this? Did Satan do this? My answer is, I don't know, and neither does anybody else. Okay? So we can spend hours upon hours discussing, do the problems of life come from God or do they come from Satan? And the answer is, I don't know, and neither do you. What we do know is they come. The struggles come. Somehow, after Stephen is stoned, that there's this great persecution. Saul is kind of in charge of it. That appears in Acts chapter 8. And it drives the believers from their homes. It causes families to be split up. And then we will ask the question again, how horrible that must have been. But the key to this, folks, is that the church is scattered. If you read there in Acts 8, everybody, the apostles stayed in Jerusalem, but everybody else had to leave because they were coming after them. Okay? So when they are dispersed, when they have to take off because of that, do you remember what it says in those passages we looked at? Is that they went preaching the word wherever they went. In the midst of their crisis, in the midst of what's going on, the persecution, when they leave Jerusalem, what are they doing? Running for their lives, but also while they're running, they're doing what? Preaching. Find us doing that in the midst of this. They did not forget their reason to be. What is yours? What is ours? Do we miss that somewhere along the line? The old French raison d'etre, the reason to be. What is the very essence of our life? What is the very purpose of our life? Why are we here? And the answer is, as Christians, to glorify and serve God. The highest calling we could possibly have is what we hear. But do we forget that in the midst of the problems that we go through? Do we get deterred because we miss the main point of what this is all about? So what is our reason for being alive today? What purpose are we serving for being here today? I believe most people exist today. I don't believe most people live anymore. They're just kind of here. I always think about that street side funeral home. in Chicago I saw one time. I didn't stop there, of course, because the sign said, "Why walk around half dead? We can bury it for $99.99." When I walk around the streets of Watsika, when I see the people that I see and talk to them, most of those people inside are pretty much dead. There's nothing inside. You look at their eyes, there's nothing there. It's like the young boy that was in a gang that I met up in Chicago. He was 15 years old. I asked him, "What do you want to be when you're 18? You know what he said? Alive. I'd be sad, and he wasn't. I won't go into that story, but he was gunned down by an opposing gang. But he had no hope. And I see that in our world today. We see that all around us. I went out to see the wall, the Vietnam Wall, and some of the younger people, you don't remember Vietnam. It was probably one of the worst times in the history of our country, being split. Jerry Chungus was a young man from Alvin, Illinois, south of Rossville, that was killed in Vietnam, and I went out to see if his name was out there. How many of you remember Vietnam and the return? Our soldiers were shown little, if no respect.
Amen.
After that. And when they did that, my brother, Russ, was one of those. And the lady was out there. How many of you been to the wall? Oh my, it's going out tonight, I think, but you need to go. You need to go see that and see 58,300 names. That's how many men and women were killed in Vietnam. I can do it. 400 a week. I remember that. That was in my age. I was 19. I was on the verge of being drafted into the military. I remember all that was going on there. But the lady that was there, a nice lady, she came up and she showed me how to find out where Jerry's name was at. So we found it. And she said, "Did you have any family member that died in Vietnam?" And I said, "Yes, my brother. He just didn't know." 40 years after the fact, 40 years after the fact, my brother Russ now has Agent Orange cancer, skin cancer. He has PTSD. Never knew he had it. He's had it all these years. Struggling in a lot of ways. All reverts back. There are a lot of people that physically are walking around, but they've already died spiritually. And our reason to be is to bring them back to life through Christ, to give them that hope that they need to have here. Okay? So through this persecution, Acts 1:8 said that they are to go to Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the uttermost parts of the world. God takes them along. When Satan thought he was going to destroy the church in Jerusalem, when he stamped on the flame, it just started a lot of fires going. Didn't put it out at all. And in the midst of this, there's Philip. And he goes where? Samaria. Now that's interesting, because Jews and Samaritans did not get along very well at all. But here again, I see this great sovereignty of God. Because not too many years prior to this, it's going to be Jesus that stops at this well and talks to this lady. Where was he at? Samaria. And he talks to the Samaritan woman. And she goes back into town and tells all these people about this Jesus, that he told her everything about herself. And sure enough, here comes Philip preaching who? Jesus. The seed planted many years before. And now here is God cultivating all of that and bringing that to fruition where these souls are going to be saved because of what happened years before. And now it's time to take advantage of it. See, we need to be awake. We need to be aware of the opportunities that God gives to us. They're not by mistake. I don't believe in luck. I don't believe in coincidence. Everything is God working. I see him working at all times. And we need to take advantage of that. So in the midst of this, he sends Philip to Samaria, and then we see God discerning. God is watching all of this. Okay, first question, why did God send Philip to preach? Why not send an apostle? Same answer is sovereignty of God.
You don't get qualified, work for.
You don't qualify? Okay. What's in chapter 6, when all this happens, it is the Grecian widows that are saying they're not getting served food correctly. And the reason that Philip goes to Samaria, because he's not a Jew. If he walked into that town as a Jew, it had been over with. But remember, he was one of the men selected by the Grecian people, non-Jewish people, to help in the church. So he's right there. He's the one going to be able to do this, to help them. The second thing is, why send Philip? Because God has a much bigger plan than what we see. You know, sometimes to me it's like we're arguing over where one piece of the puzzle goes and we're missing the whole puzzle. That we're just looking so small and so little in our thinking here that we're missing the point. Okay? God's ways are not our ways. We read that out of Isaiah 55, how true that is. When the Apostle Paul, or Saul at that time, was going to Damascus, and he is blinded by God, and sent him to Damascus to meet this man. Remember who preaches to him? Anybody? Ananias. And Ananias preaches to Paul. You know, people say that Paul was saved on the road to Damascus. No, he was not. He was saved in the house of Judas in Damascus. But Ananias comes and preaches to him. You know how many times we read about Ananias in the Bible? It's one time. This is it. Look, what impact did Ananias have on world history? Who did he convert? Who did he preach to? Paul. And he has all this impact upon the world that all the Christians now it's going to come back to Ananias and a part of that. And that's what we need to look at too. We look so small sometimes, we don't see what really is going on in the world around us. That the Spirit of God is working on Philip, the Spirit of God is working in Philip. And then we see the Spirit lead him and prepare not only him, but the people he's going to preach to. It's kind of like the lady that was standing here talking to the neighbors, and the husband was standing there, and the lady was just talking nonstop. Every once in a while, you heard the husband go, he did that 7 or 8 times. So finally his wife looked at him and said, what are you doing? He said, that's a word trying to get edgewise. How many times does God try to get a word in edgewise on us? And we're so busy talking that we can't hear, don't want to hear. And we can look and see what God is wanting us to do and the faith that He requires of us, and we will say, no, I'm not getting into that, but I sure expect to go to heaven one day. I really believe in Jesus. Do you? See, those are the answers that we have to look at and try to deal with. God did not save you to sit in these chairs. He did not save you to decide how much money we can spend and what we can't. He didn't save me to look around and complain about what's going on in the world. He created us for that. The church is here for that for us. And if we sit and deny Him, you know, remember the apostles in front of Gamaliel when they wanted to kill them? And Gamaliel said, you may find yourself fighting against God. We find ourselves fighting against God. When we find ourselves so far out of line to where God wants us to be, that we would still say, you'll be like the church at Ephesus. Remember what Jesus said about them in the book of Revelation? You've left your first love. You're doing all this stuff right, but inside you're missing it. You're missing the whole thing. That is what the church is supposed to be. That's what Philip was doing to us. That he didn't question God. He didn't debate God. He went forward. It's like the guy that is talking to his friends about wanting to know whether they should play golf or go to church on Sunday night. So he decided, I'd flip a coin. And I flipped that coin. Heads, I was going to go to church. Tails, I played golf. And I had to flip that coin 43 times before it came up. We'll say this is what God wants, but it's what we want. Philip didn't debate this, okay? God is going to come to him and show him that He wants him to preach. He wants him to preach. What did He tell him to do? He comes to Samaria and he preaches, and so successful. You read there, I mean, all kinds of people becoming Christians. Okay? And you think, well, Philip's going to stay there for a long time. God comes to him and says, Philip, I want you to go down on the road to Gaza. I want you to go there. How many people live on that road to Gaza? Zero. There's nobody there at all. So can't you see Philip in today's world getting up in front of a congregation of 3,000 people and saying, I'm resigning? Why? Well, God's calling me somewhere else. Where? To this isolated place on the road to Gaza. What town are you going to? Don't know. Why is he sending you there? Don't know. All I know is what? He's sending me. And if God's sending me, I'm going. I'm going. Leaving this to go. It doesn't make any sense to us, does it? But it does to God. Very well, R.C. Sproul is a well-known speaker and author. And he said one of the questions that he would get most often in speaking was, where was God on 9/11? When the trade centers were hit by bombs. Do you know what his answer is? Precisely where he was the day before and precisely where he was the day after. He's on the throne. It doesn't make sense to us. We don't understand. But we're not supposed to understand. So we're back to that one piece of the puzzle where we're missing the whole puzzle. We're not looking at the big picture of what this is about. One of the worst things I can think of is as a Christian end up at the end of my life finding out that I have resisted God my whole life. I refused Him my whole life. I knew what He was calling. I knew what He wanted to do. Sometimes we don't agree with Him, so it makes no sense to us. There was a time in the Old Testament that King David decided he was going to build a temple for God. And he went to the prophet Nathan and said, I'm going to build this temple. And Nathan says, great idea, David, build it. And then Nathan goes back to God, and God says, no. David is not building the temple. He was a man of war. Therefore, he's not building the temple. Nathan goes back to God. Goes back to David and says, God said no. If you look there in 2 Samuel 7, I believe it is, that David prays to God, and 5 times in his prayer, folks, he says, Sovereign God, Sovereign Lord, you're in charge, you're doing it. It's okay. It's okay if I don't get to do this because you are the God that's in control of all things. We need to come to that in our everyday life. Okay? God is in control of all things. Of all things. Okay? That He is discerning, He is directing. There is nothing outside of His control. Now, I appreciate, and I caution, I guess I hesitate to say this, but I appreciate Danny when he did the prayer time, that he mentioned Rick and Jill, didn't tell you what or why, because of my requesting not do that. But I want my brothers, sisters in Christ, I'll tell you that after, those of you know that 2 years ago, Rich had a stroke from kidney stone. He had some large surgery. He still hasn't recovered a lot from that surgery. He has. He's back to work and everything. But this past week, Jill has filed for divorce against him. In the midst of all of this, I don't know what's going to happen, but I know one thing, folks, God is in control of all things. And that's what I'm telling you. It's okay. I don't know what's going to happen. God doesn't call me and say, Joe, here's what the deal is, but I know that God is in control of all things. And somehow this is going to work in a way that God wants it to work in many, many ways. He's directing this. God leads Philip, but He doesn't tell him what's going to happen. He doesn't tell him, here's how this is going to work out. He said, just go to this road and see and wait. Because God, even though we don't know God's plan in our circumstances, we don't know how it's going to work out, we know that God is in control of all things. All things. Years ago, we were thinking about going to Bible college and lived out east of Rossville, and there was this puppet team that came called Puppet Power from Central Christian College of the Bible. And the man that was in charge of that, his name was David Orr. Okay? So they needed a place to stay overnight. The kids had a place to stay overnight, and David Orr stayed at our house. And about 6 or 7 months later, we went to Central Christian College of the Bible, and guess who was in charge of sending young students out to preach? David Orr. So here is this young guy. I was 26 compared to 64. That's young. Okay? But we got there in June, and I got to start preaching every week somewhere before I ever started Bible college. And there were seniors that weren't being able to go out and preach, and there was that. Who is this guy? He doesn't even go to school here. How'd that work out? Because God led David Orr and us to cross paths. And the result is God was going to work in a great way in that way he did. It's amazing how God overrules the plans of men. Yes, sir. When you see the angel came to him, what we have is the Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit, between the Bible and the Holy Spirit, is going to prompt us. We're going to know. When I became a Christian at 22, I knew I was going to be a preacher. God had instilled that. There's no audible voice. Very good. You know what I think? I think 99% of the people that are sitting here were thinking the same question. Good deal. I'll give you a dollar later. No. Very good though, right? Very good. Napoleon's quote, here's another kid that wants to come.
I think there's one thing we should always keep in mind, and that's the timing.
That's what it's all about.
There's things on his schedule, not ours. Regardless of how and we should be praying for is the ability to understand God's actions.
See, most of the time when I pray for what's God's will. Not what I think, what I'm sure is right, what is your will, and at the timing. You know, the reason why that the Israelites went 40 years in the wilderness, because they disobeyed God. They didn't have the faith to go into the promised land. When God tells them they're going to spend those 40 years wandering, what's the first thing they try to do? Go into the promised land. But the timing, and that is the key, okay? That is the key. It's like the young lady that says, God, I want patience, I want it right now. It may not be fulfilled in our lifetime, folks. We can't put God on that kind of thinking. That he is looking, in fact, there's a verse in Hebrews 11 that says that these Old Testament people did not see the fulfillment because it's them and us together at the very end that we're going to stop and say, one of those aha moments, oh, that's what God was doing. And until that time, it's by faith. It's by faith. Okay? Very good. Two kids. Very good. Napoleon's quote was, man proposes and God disposes. It was being a prophet. It's true. We look at the world, we're so afraid of what's going on. Why? Why? God's in control of all things, isn't he? You know, I told you about my brother Russ that has he's got the skin cancer, he's got some of the other emotional problems. I've lost two brothers, and neither one of them got to 70 years of age. Russ just turned 69. I'm 64. And Russ has talked to me about it, and he's asked me about it. I refuse to live in fear because God is in control of all things. I don't know what's going to happen. It doesn't really enter into my mind what's going to happen down in the future. Okay? So we have to come to terms with that God is in control of all things. Okay? And we have to not only say that, we've got to believe it. It's okay. It's okay what's happening in the world. Evil is present, but in the ultimate outcome is that God is in control of everything, even our own personal lives. He's in control of it. And we have to remember that. Remember Greyhound buses? Do you remember what their phrase was? Not a good thing to me? Okay. Anybody know what the motto was? Take the bus and leave the driving to us. Not old enough to remember that. Come back, my son, that's what's on the line. That's what God is saying. Get on the bus and just ride with me. I've got this. I've got this. And we have to come to believe that in our lives and live it. I see what's happening in our world, but it doesn't surprise me. We talk about this in the Bible study on Wednesday nights a lot. It bothers me, it concerns me about the evil, the wickedness, the rejection of Christ in our world today, but I'm not surprised by it. It's been this way forever. Since the Garden of Eden has been this way. But God is still in control, and he delivers. Because who comes along on the road to Gaza? It's Ethiopian eunuch. Okay? He's a treasurer for Candace, who was queen of Ethiopia. He's the only guy But Philip travels all that way for this one man, preaches to him, he becomes a Christian. And I can tell history records in years to come, when the first missionaries come to Ethiopia, they find these strong Christian churches. That this one man is going to introduce Christianity to all Africa because of what Philip did when God commanded him. That's simple, isn't it? Glenn Chalmers was the man that always wanted to get on the radio and for missions. And there was one called the Mission for the Andes Mountains, and he always wanted to be able to broadcast Christianity over the radio. So he finally found this job. Okay? And I believe they were going to Ecuador on a flight down there so he could work with this company. And he was at the airport in Miami. The last moment he wanted to write his mom a little note, but he couldn't find anything. He looked down, he saw this piece of paper, and it said "Y" on it. It's the only thing it said on the paper. So he grabbed it, he scribbled what he wanted to write to his mom on that paper, put it in an envelope, and sent it. His plane crashed before he ever got to Ecuador. He was killed. And after his mom had learned that he had been killed in his plane crash, she gets this letter. And she opens it up, and she sees the one side of that letter that simply says "Y." On the other side, she sees these words that Glenn had written. That is the sovereignty of God. That God is too kind to be cruel. He's too wise to make a mistake. He's too deep to explain himself. That's where we accept the sovereignty of God. Whatever is happening, God is in control of it. I'm not going to tell you He's causing it. He's allowing it, at least. But He is in control of all of it, even every aspect of our lives. Our invitation this morning, we're going to stand to sing. Jesus, I Come, I believe, is what we have as our invitation time. So I'm going to ask if we'll just stand together and if we will sing.